Good evening. This is Kathleen Drew, Chair of the Washington State Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council meeting, calling to order our meeting tonight. On the agenda, we have the High Top and Ostrea Solar Project. This is a public meeting to receive comments on that project. We are currently reviewing the application for High Top Ostrea Solar Project located in Yakima County, Washington. Since the council has granted the applicant expedited processing, this public comment meeting complies with RCW 8050-090 sub 5. This public comment meeting is to receive verbal comments on conditions that could be imposed upon the project to adhere to the conditional use criteria in the Yakima County Code. We are looking for comments that directly do relate to those criteria. And with no further ado, I will ask Ms. Owens to call the roll.
Department of Commerce.
Kate Kelly, present.
Department of Ecology.
Eli Levitt, present.
Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Mike Livingston, present.
Department of Natural Resources.
Lenny Young, present.
Utilities and Transportation Commission.
Stacy Brewster, present.
The Assistant Attorney General.
John Thompson, present.
The Administrative Law Judge.
Laura Bradley, present.
For FSEC Council Staff, Sonia Bumpus.
Sonia Bumpus, present.
Amy Hofgemeyer.
Amy Hofgemeyer, present.
Andrea Grantham.
Andrea Grantham, present.
Stuart Henderson.
Here.
Dave Walker.
Dave Walker, present.
John Barnes.
John Barnes, present.
Osta Davis.
Osta Davis, present.
And Joanne Snarsky.
Joanne Snarsky, present.
And is anybody from Council for the Environment on the line? Okay, hearing none. Chair, we have a quorum for the council.
Thank you very much. At this point, I would like to introduce Administrative Law Judge Laura Bradley, who will be facilitating and presiding over this meeting. Judge Bradley.
Thank you, Chair Drew, and good evening, everyone. So the agenda is posted there for you. First, we will hear a presentation from Cypress Creek Renewables. And so the person making that presentation, please begin with stating your name and spelling it for the record.
Hello, my name is Jess Mosley. J-E-S-S-M-O-S-L-E-H.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
I'll be turning on my camera here. Okay. Hello, thank you, Madam Chair Drew, Judge Bradley, FSEC council members and FSEC staff, stakeholders, and other interested parties. Thank you all for your time today. Next slide, please. My name is Jess Mosley, and it's an honor to be back here today representing Cypress Creek Renewables and our FSEC application for the Ostrea and High Top solar projects. The team is grateful to have the opportunity to come back and present to you all today. Next slide, please. Here's a brief overview of what we'll be presenting to you all today. I will walk you through who the Cypress team is. Our legal counsel, Susan Drummond, will speak to the conditional use criteria for the projects. I'll give you a project update on Ostrea Solar, and I'll hand off the rest of the presentation to Heather Wise, who is the new developer on High Top. Next slide, please. I'd like to reintroduce our team. Ty Wallace is Senior Development Director for Transmission Scale Projects in the West. I'm really excited to introduce you all to our new high top developer, Heather Wise. Saya Stratton is our environmental director. Julie Alpert is our senior environmental manager, and Aaron Berquist is our TRC project manager consultant. Once again, our statement as an organization is powering a sustainable future, one project at a time. As I mentioned during our first information meeting and land use hearing, the company takes a lot of pride in our work, and we strive to build long-lasting relationships in the communities that we work in. Next slide, please. So here's an updated slide of Cypress's core competencies, which is similar to what you all saw in the initial information meeting. Cypress Creek is not only a solar and storage developer, we're a long-time term asset management and owner-operator of renewable projects throughout the United States. In the past 8 years, Cypress has developed over 10 gigawatts of solar energy projects. We have also financed over $3 billion of solar projects, in addition to performing asset management and operations, maintenance for our own fleet operating assets, as well as third-party operating projects. Next slide, please. I will now be handing off the next few slides to Susan Drummond, who will speak to the conditional use criteria for the projects.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Susan Drummond. I represent Cypress Creek. Susan Drummond is spelled SUSANDRUMMOND. The first slide I'd like to point to are the Yakima County Code criteria. There's no need to read them as they're here in the packet and of course online. But in summary, the criteria essentially require that the project be compatible with surrounding uses, that it meet all local code requirements, and that it not present material detriment or injury to surrounding properties. The project meets all of these criteria. If we could move to the next slide, please. So I'll just provide a brief flyover of project consistency with the criteria. In terms of community need and benefit to the community, the project is located on vacant, non-irrigated land. It will not adversely impact public infrastructure or environmental resources. It supports the rural economy through tax revenue and lease payments and presents an overall benefit to the community. The project is also consistent with the county's comprehensive plan. It's consistent with goals in the plan which direct the county to consider energy supply alternatives and to diversify the rural agricultural base. The project is also consistent with the rural and agricultural goals. It provides economic support to minimize land conversion risks, and on the site, crop production has been non-existent for over 25 years. The weedy species which dominate the site in previously plowed areas are not well suited for year-round livestock grazing. And of course, after the project's commercial life, it would be decommissioned and removed. If I could have the next slide, please. The project is also compatible with neighboring land uses. It is north of State Route 24, south of the Yakima Training Center, and 20 to 22 miles east of Moxie. The project, well, yes.
May I interrupt, please?
Yes.
I'm speaking very quickly, and we do have a court reporter making a transcript. So if you could slow down a little bit, that would be helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, I do have a tendency to do that. Thank you. But I will slow down, make it a little easier for the court reporter. Also, the project is well set back, and that includes at least 300 feet from the Yakima Training Center. In terms of other uses, there's agriculture and grazing to the west, with the nearest residents several miles away. There's grazing to the east, and with the residents 850 feet east from Austria's boundary and 3 miles from High Top's boundary. Transportation is also fully addressed. The State Route 24 approach onto the private access road will be improved for safety and access, and all county and WashDOT requirements will be met. The project size is appropriate for the project, and all local code requirements will be met. That includes building codes, fire codes, and all other county requirements. And then the county code also provides for conditions to be imposed on the project, and the FSEC proposal is will be fully mitigated and conditioned to address the project's impacts. So overall, the projects meet all of the county code criteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Over the past couple of months, both Ostrea and High Top achieved two monumental milestones in the FSEC process. First, FSEC issued a revised mitigated determination of non-significance on October 28th. There are several conditions that both projects will comply with in order to ensure the projects will mitigate any significant adverse impacts on the environment. A couple of these mitigations include monitoring for erosion and considering mitigation ratios for habitat impacts, such as shrub steppe habitat and cheatgrass. The projects will honor the MDNS and continue to comply with what's appropriate. Second, land use consistency was approved by Council on November 8th, which deemed both projects as consistent and in compliance with land use and zoning ordinances. By this order, the Council concluded that with proper mitigation, the projects could be approved under the conditional use provisions of Yakima County Code Title 19. Our team is proud to have accomplished these critical milestones in the process, and we will continue to work together and make these projects a success. Next slide, please. Here's the Ostrea Solar site plan layout. There were several modifications to the initial site plan to minimize resource impacts. Not only do we consider micrositing during the land process, but we are committed to working with the environment that surrounds the projects. We understand there are sensitivities to work around, which is exactly what is demonstrated here. A couple of areas I'd like to highlight that were designed to consider and minimize any potential impact were avoiding sensitive plants and cultural areas identified during the surveys and maintaining wildlife corridors open along the majority of the passing stream channels on both project sites. This includes maintaining a 1 mile wide wildlife corridor between the western and eastern parcels of the Ostrea project. Additionally, the project will fence subsets of panel arrays instead of a singular fence around the entire project footprint to allow for greater wildlife movement and habitat connectivity. Tying this back to the MDNS, we are in agreement with the requested mitigation to include revegetation with native seed mixes and providing wildlife-friendly fencing. Next slide, please. Moving along to the environmental studies completed for Ostrea. For those of you who attended the first information meeting, this is a slide you saw during that presentation. We thought it was important to show you all once again the various studies that were completed for the project. As previously stated, the primary goal of each environmental report was to gain a deep understanding of the land's sensitive areas in order to avoid and help mitigate any impacts on the project site may have. The results were favorable and they indicated no major impact on the project location. Next slide, please. We wanted to provide you all with a brief Ostrea Solar update and show you where the project is today. As some of you may know, Ostrea is an 80 megawatt project in Yakima County. Starting off with site control and surveys. While we have over 1,600 acres under site control, we intentionally secured over 1,600 acres with the intent to reduce the acreage, knowing that there would be sensitivities to consider. We secured all easements and completed our topo and alta boundary surveys, and our mineral and title curative work is near completion. In terms of interconnection, we've built a strong relationship with the Bonneville Power team and touch base with them regularly and provide updates for them as we move along the FSEC process and vice versa. We communicate on project updates and we're working through the interconnection process and Ostrea's technical studies together. On to FSEC, you all know where we stand today in terms of the MDNS and land use consistency, which we will continue to work with FSEC staff, and again, are very thankful to be part of the process to ensure we're doing everything we're able to from our end to make these projects a success. The geotechnical studies for the project are complete, and we are currently in the process of going out to bid for the engineering and procurement RFP, and we're expecting that release to occur Q1 of 2023. Thank you all very much for your time today. I will be handing over the presentation to Heather Wise, and she will finish it off with high top solar updates.
Thanks, Jess. Thank you to the council and the agency members for the time today. I'm Heather Wise, a project developer at Cypress Creek and the developer for our High Top project, which is adjacent to Ostrea in Yakima County. My name to be spelled out is HEATHERWISE. Taking a look at the site layout on this slide, this is a proposed 80 megawatt solar project. Cypress Creek does take into thoughtful consideration the impacts of the site design on the existing habitat and surrounding environment of the project itself. This is done through various environmental studies and in consultation with FSEC staff and agencies over the last year. In general, taking a look at the project site itself, it is former plowed cropland that is dominated by non-native weedy species, as Susan highlighted. This makes it an ideal project site for solar development for High Top. That being said, the Cypress Creek team has created a site layout that mitigates any impacts to the surrounding land in a few different ways. The first is through wildlife corridors, and we have maintained the wildlife corridors along the channels to the west and east of the solar array. So you'll notice that the land to the west of the array is open, and also to the east it's open for wildlife activity. Additionally, there is a wildlife corridor remained between the north and south array along the transmission line. This was based on direct feedback from the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, and we've incorporated this into our design to address that. Secondly, we're avoiding the shrub steppe in the north and south areas of the project, as well as the rare plant population in the north area of the project. So those are the gray shaded areas on the site layout that you'll notice on the screen, areas that we're avoiding for plant species. We're also naturally avoiding the channels to the west and east of the project site. All of these efforts help demonstrate that Cypress Creek has thoughtfully designed the High Top project in accordance with guidance from FSEC Council and agencies. We can go to the next slide, please. This includes a list of the environmental studies completed for the project that help us better understand and mitigate any impacts the project may have to the site location itself. These studies can be found on the website as well for future reference if they're needed, but we wanted to include a list today for reference. We can move to the next slide. This is a high-level summary of the project development for High Top to date. As mentioned, this is a proposed 80 megawatt project with a 40 megawatt energy storage system. So this project will have a battery as well, located on site. For the site itself, the project footprint will cover 631 acres of the total leased area of 1,500 acres. And we have secured site control for the project. We have an executed interconnection agreement with Pacificor as the utility for the project. We're also continuing to advance our design with our engineering team, and we're in the process of working with EPC contractors to look to commencing construction in the next year as we wrap up development and receive final permitting approval from FSEC. Please feel free to refer to these slides. And the last item that I'll note is offtake conversations are ongoing for this project and remains a focus to wrap up project development. But please refer to these slides if there are any additional questions, but that does conclude our presentation today. If we flip to the next slide, we thank you for your time and feel free to reach out if there are any questions.
All right, thank you for your presentations. I'll just mention quickly for folks who are attending the meeting but not actually speaking, please make sure that you've muted your computer or phone, whatever device you're using. Chair Drew, do you have any questions about the presentation from the applicant?
I do not. Thank you for the presentation. Other council members, do you have questions for the applicant? I don't hear any at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll proceed with the FSEC presentation by the FSEC staff.
Thank you, Judge Bradley. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for coming to participate this evening. My name is Amy Hofkemeyer, and the spelling for the record is AMIHAFKEMEYER. Excuse me. And I am the Director of Siting and Compliance for the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council. I'll be giving a brief presentation on our process to date for this project. The applicant, Cypress Creek Renewables, submitted the application for site certification, or ASC, to FSEC on April 7, 2022. With the application, the applicant also submitted a letter requesting expedited process in accordance with the revised Code of Washington, or RCW 80.50.080. On June 1st, FSEC held the public informational meeting, followed immediately by the land use consistency hearing. Both of these meetings were held virtually. The applicant referred to Appendix A of the ASC in their statement at the land use hearing, which contains certificates of zoning compliance from the Yakima County Planning Office. On July 19th, at the regularly scheduled monthly council meeting, the applicant requested and the council approved the extension of the expedited processing determination by 10 weeks. This determination is stated within Washington Administrative Code, or WAC, 463-63-050 to be made within 120 days of receipt of the application or such time as is mutually agreed upon by the applicant and the council. This extension was requested and granted to allow for the completion of the State Environmental Policy Act, or SEPA, review. On October 18th, the council voted to approve Order 884, determining the proposal to be consistent with local land use ordinances in place at the time of application. On October 1st, FSEC issued a SEPA threshold determination of mitigated determination of non-significance, or MDNS, followed by a 14-day public comment period. On October 28th, FSEC issued the final revised MDNS. On November 2nd, the council went on a site tour and viewed the High Top and Ostrea sites from a nearby vantage point. There are two requirements identified within WAC 463-43-030 for a proposal to be eligible for expedited process. The first, that the proposal qualifies for an MDNS. The second, that the proposal be deemed consistent with local land use ordinances. With the land use consistency determination made by Order 884 and the revised MDNS issued on October 28th, the council voted to approve the applicant's expedited process request by Order 885 on November 15th. WAC 463-43-080 requires that the recommendation to the governor shall be made within 60 days following the granting of expedited processing or such later time as is mutually agreed upon by the applicant and the council. On November 29th, the council reviewed and approved the request to extend this timeline to February 22nd. This extension would allow for the council to hold and then review public comment received during the conditional use criteria meeting that we are participating in this evening. Following tonight's meeting, public comment received will be reviewed and the council will vote to make its recommendation to the governor. If the council recommends approval, it prepares a draft site certification agreement, or SCA, that must include conditions to protect state or local governmental or community interests affected by the construction or operation of the facility. The draft SCA must also include conditions designed to recognize the purpose of applicable state and local laws and ordinances, which are preempted to the extent that they regulate the location, construction, and operation of energy facilities under FSEC's jurisdiction. If signed by the governor and the applicant, the site certification agreement is binding. Per RCW 80.50.100, the governor shall, within 60 days of receipt of the council's recommendation, take one of the following actions: approve the application and execute the draft SCA, reject the application, or direct the council to reconsider certain aspects of the draft SCA. That concludes my overview of the project activity to date and my presentation for this evening. Before I conclude, I'd like to remind everybody how they may submit comments for this evening's meeting. If you'd like to speak this evening but have not yet signed up, you can call the FSEC main line at 360-664-1305. You may also email comments to our main inbox at fsec@fsec.wa.gov or efsec@efsec.wa.gov. Lastly, comments may be submitted to our online comment database at https://comments.efsec.wa.gov. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hefkemeyer. Just a point of clarification, the phone number that you cited did not match what you stated as the phone number. So can you confirm what the correct phone number is?
My apologies. The correct phone number is our FSEC mainline, which is available on the screen right now for anybody joining through Microsoft Teams. 360-664-1345.
Thank you. Chair Drew, any questions before we proceed with public comment?
Are there any questions from council members? I think we can proceed. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. My understanding is that a commissioner from Yakima County is planning to comment, and so we'll begin with that person. I want to let folks know that we will be limiting comments to 5 minutes, and we will only allow one opportunity to speak. So it's very important that you focus your comments specifically on the land use criteria and your comments about that. So I see the commissioner on video. Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Yes, Amanda McKinney, Yakima County Commissioner. Amanda is AMANDA. McKinney is McKinney. Hi, good evening, Madam Chair and everyone on the committee. It is a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with you on behalf of Yakima County. This is my second opportunity to do so on these projects. I wanted to cover a couple of things, which first is the reason for the meeting. The purpose were your 4 topics that we were to discuss. Number 1, comply with development standards, which is an issue that Yakima County has taken up with this board because for layman's terms and any of a benefit of the public listening, planning departments in Yakima County were reached out to and it was asked of them whether or not this was disallowed. And to put it in very simple terms for anyone, we didn't specifically disallow it. And so the logic has been from the state that if it wasn't specifically disallowed, then it would be okay, which of course is a very interesting and subjective way to look at things. And so when we saw that things were going forward and that we did not have a code that actually addressed energy projects adequately, which is what we should be doing, we enacted a solar moratorium. So I want to make sure everyone understands that the solar moratorium enacted by Yakima County still stands today. And the purpose is in good faith for us to look at how we can be a part of the solution that the state of Washington has determined is a way to proceed with green energy projects. We do not adequately address that in our county codes, and we have simply said that we need to have time so that we can do so. And I think it's indicative of a conversation that we all know is happening across the state. Our state legislature is taking this up right now. The governor has talked about how he would like to see FSEC receive additional funding to move forward with projects. We also know that there's been a call for studying. I know these projects are being considered independently, but it is very clear that with FSEC's request by the governor to have statewide significance, then this is a project that needs to be studied as a whole. What is the entire intent of the state of Washington to really shift in how we're creating energy sources and updating our energy grid and relying on green energy projects? Yakima County is not unwilling to be a participant, but we do need to have a plan. And I want to speak to a plan. I just spent 8 hours today in the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan meeting. And this is a group that I've had the privilege to recently join, but this group has been going on for years, decades. And the depth and breadth of knowledge of folks in this room, from ecology, from Bureau of Reclamation, there are folks who are far smarter than I when it comes to fish storage and passage. We have the tribal involvement. And what it really shows is that when you come together, you can actually develop an integrated plan and you get discourse, but out of it comes something that is called upon by the nation as a way to progress through difficult decisions on how to use our natural resources, acknowledging that no one is ever going to get everything that they want, but there is balance. And what we are not seeing in this process is balance, an expedited process going forward. When this county ordinance is simply saying, we didn't address this adequately, we want to have time to be a part of a state conversation of how to address this. So my request to this board is to reject the proposals, so the legislature can adequately address what has been asked by the governor for this state and its residents, which is to categorically change the way we look at our ag land. Because as a county commissioner, my job, I am entrusted to protect the ag land, and Yakima County has $5 billion annually of income that is earned and generated for the state of Washington. We are feeding the nation. We're incredibly proud of that. So how can we work with this new concept in energy to make sure that we are not cutting ourselves short for the future food production that we will be called upon to provide for the United States? Thank you.
Thank you. Can you tell me when the moratorium on solar projects was enacted?
Yes, ma'am. I believe that was in July. I can get you the specific date.
July of 2022.
Yes. And I would simply, and if you need a specific, I can get you a copy, but I'm certain that this board has been provided a copy.
Thank you. Chair Drew, do you have any questions you want to ask Commissioner McKinney?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Ms. Owens, can you tell me who else signed up to speak this evening?
Would you like the full list or just the next person?
Just the next person, please.
Okay, Dale Hilly.
Okay, is Dale Hilly with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Hilly. Would you please state your name and spell it for the record, and then you can proceed.
Yes. My name is Dale Hilly. It's D-A-L-E-H-I-L-L-E. I am the Fire Chief of Yakima County Fire District 4, the East Valley Fire Department. I'm going to read to you a statement which has already been sent to FSEC, but I would like to read it at this time. Yakima County Fire District 4, East Valley Fire Department provides fire response to the East Valley and the rural areas surrounding it. We provide fire suppression to mile marker 18 on Highway 24, as well as EMS response to mile marker 30. Excuse me. It is our operational policy when called to fires outside the mile marker 18 area that we respond when called, report on scene, and provide fire suppression only if we can make a difference in the situation as an initial response in order to control spread or contain the event. We support our mutual aid partners that have contractual arrangements in the no man's land areas, and we will do what we can to assist the citizens in that part of the county outside of our district boundaries. The East Valley Fire Department does not take a stand on whether the proposed solar farm should or should not be allowed to be built. As with any construction in a wildland area, there is an inherent risk of fire due to the surrounding ground cover and topography. That is uncontrollable. We do believe that the proposed construction of such a large project in an unprotected area of the county should at minimum be required to have contractual fire suppression service in the event of a fire at the site or one that overruns the area in a wildfire, as well as other construction details to assist in the event of a fire or emergency, both during construction and when the project is completed. Construction of the facility should include access to all sides of the facility through large gates large enough to allow access of firefighting equipment. Roadways need to be constructed wide enough to allow for equipment to pass comfortably through the panel array and make turns at the end or as intersections as well as allow for any needed operations near the suppression equipment. Vegetation management must be established and maintained on both inside the perimeter fence of the facility, as well as having a 30-foot buffer around the outside of the facility fence with the same vegetation management. The perimeter fencing must be kept free of blown-in weeds and debris for fire protection of the facility. If a water source is located on the property, it would have the ability to be accessed by the fire department if necessary to fill suppression equipment. All disconnect equipment must be clearly marked for the responders. All battery storage facilities must have an appropriate fire suppression system for the hazards presented. Pre-incident planning will be needed on an annual basis at the sites in order to keep the responders up to date on the facility. The East Valley will entertain entering into a fire suppression contract with the owners operators of the solar farms if construction is forthcoming. We would also be willing to be a resource during construction to ensure our equipment and manpower can function effectively in case of an emergency at the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Owens, our next speaker, please.
Lori Jeffrey.
Is Lori Jeffrey with us?
Yes, I'm here. I
Could
was
you
able to come on off of the phone and onto the site on the internet, so this is better. Yes, I'm here.
All right. Could you please state your name and spell it for the record, and then you may proceed with your comments.
Yes, my name is Lori Jeffrey, L-O-R-R-E-G-E-F-R-E. Did you ask me something else? Forgot.
No, you can proceed.
Okay. First, thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to speak. I have been involved since I knew that this was the Governor, the Inslee Murray project. And this is all part of it. And I also know Governor Inslee used to reside in this area. But my main concerns regarding the massive amounts of, these aren't the only two planned, and I'm not sure the public knows how many are really planned. There's signs on gates that if you know what to look for, you see them. I don't think the public has been forewarned about how this might affect them in the future. And I agree with Amanda McKinney that I just don't think there's been adequate time for people to really realize what's been happening, nor can they plan through the county. And we shouldn't be crushed as people because we don't know or we weren't informed enough. And again, thank you for the time to talk. So my concerns are there is a lot of these that are planned. I don't believe that we even have the amount of sun it takes for all these thousands of acres that are going to be covered up, not just Ostrea and High Top, but the others planned out in this area. There's a lot of wildlife. There's a lot of wildland. There's a lot of very interesting little creatures that are out here that you won't find anywhere else because it is secluded in a lot of ways and they can survive here. The ecosystem will be messed up forever once it happens. Also, I've always had a concern about the fire department, that we don't have a fire department. I live out here. I've lived out in this area for 38 years, 40 years, I don't know now. But anyway, I've watched a lot. I've been out in nature a lot. And when you don't have the fire protection, that's scary enough. But I've also read these solar farms can generate their own fires and it's not recorded. And I brought this up in meetings with Interjects. There's no answer. There's no answer to this. It's just like put it in and we don't care. We're going to go as we choose. I also know from watching in the past, mitigation means nothing. There is no oversight. No one will do anything. Once the doors open, it's open free for whatever happens. I've been in politics for quite a while on several things and observed this. And I know state agencies, they do their job. I know ecology, wildlife, they're also paid by the state. They can lose funding. I'm very familiar with a lot of this stuff. And I also do not want the newspaper quoting me as wrong this time and saying I'm for these projects. I'm not, because people have not been involved and the county's being left out. Public is not aware, and the wildlife is going to be crushed also. This is not that far from the firing center. They have their own fires on top of it. Plus, I have read also that you need specially trained firefighters to fight these fires with these solar farms because of the toxins. We've got the batteries, the leakage. How much water is going to be used? Do these things have to be washed off? We lack water in this area. My well went dry 2 years ago during the drought. And how much water is going to be used for construction? I have a lot of questions and I don't feel they've been answered. They're being answered. And again, this has been in a process for a long time, but the public's just starting to realize that this is happening and they do not understand how it will affect them in the future. And again, once more, I'll say fire protection, wildlife, people matter. I don't call this green energy. It looks like it is, but to me, it doesn't look green, except in money for a very few. And again, thank you for your time. I appreciate the time to comment, and I really hope these will stop until things are looked at and in place, like Amanda McKinney said. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Guthrie. Ms. Owens, do we have any other speakers this evening?
Yes, there's one more on the list, Mike Tobin.
Right. Mr. Tobin, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you please state your name and spell it for the record, please?
I will. My name is Michael Tobin, MICHAELTOBIN. I'm with the North Yakima Conservation District. I am the district manager. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I understood we would be talking about items A through B that was in the information that deals with compliance with Yakima County Code and compatibility. First of all, I'll say today I'm representing the local conservation district and its authorities under RCW 8908. I'm going to speak a little bit about it's quite an impressive fiscal portfolio that the Cypress has. And there is a reason for that. And that is the process that has been set forth by this council through law that has been quoted time and time again at every public meeting that I hear. I feel that that actually is a way to suppress people from participating. That is a personal comment. The site is in this action has been characterized as being done on vacant, non-irrigated land. That is wrong. That land, many portions of it has been irrigated in the past. The economics of the proposed cropping out there at the time was no longer viable, so it changed. There is available water out there. So much so that investment companies from the East Coast have actually invested in some of the property out there. The Moxie Orchards is one of those examples just recently. Purchased land from the current landowner who is providing the lease to Ostrea. High value crops such as orchard, hops, vineyard, other crops like that use water conservation techniques and do not need as much as the previous cropping patterns of haylands that were found to be incompatible with the economics out there, but those are emerging. That investment by an investment company is proof of that. Therefore, this conversion of a solar farm, which it is not a farm, it is this industrial complex, converts agricultural land to an industrial complex. It's commercial property now. There is no other commercial property. The only allowable commercial assets that could be allowed in that area would be something similar to a controlled atmosphere building. Also find that this action is also in direct violation and will adversely affect RCW 3670, those portions related to the voluntary stewardship program. Yakima County, along with 28 other counties in the state, have chosen that as an alternative to the Growth Management Act in relationship to agricultural lands. The purpose of that RCW and that program is to assure compatibility and salvage of agricultural land, economic viability of agriculture in those communities, as well as equally protecting critical areas. The entire area that is proposed to be constructed upon is listed as critical habitat. It is a critical area. The compatibility of agriculture in critical areas is very, very documentable and done. But when you add chain link fence, you add solar panels, you do not have that compatibility with habitat. There is no other way around it. No form of mitigation can replace it. If there is embedded somewhere in some document that we cannot see, that is very difficult for the public to find, where mitigation is a cash value for any agency or nonprofit to go out and buy other like land, that further erodes the agricultural base of this community because it will be converted to habitat by those entities. Most common is Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. We've talked a lot about habitat corridors. I can tell you that the impact to sage grouse is irreplaceable. Those birds do not like these kind of structures. There is no way around it. They will not come near it. And when you consider the firing center and its management plan for sage grouse, you consider the Hanford Monument and its value for our sage grouse, you have constructed a fence in between the two. It is a non-compatible fence. Now, it's been mentioned before, this is just about Ostrea and High Top tonight. When you string Goose Prairie, Watoma, Hilltop, Solway, and Black Rock on top of that, you have such an impact that you will never, ever be able to recover from. And with that, my time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tobin. Ms. Owens, has anyone else expressed an interest in speaking this evening?
I have not seen any. That is the end of the list.
For folks who are present here, if you'd like to speak, you can raise your hand or you can send an email or call to get added to the list. And we'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. I see Mark Herkey's hand raised. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, sir.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Certainly. My name is Mark Herkey, M-A-R-K-H-E-R-K-E, and I'm the president of the Yakima County Farm Bureau. And I appreciate very much the opportunity to speak tonight, to comment, and also that you gave me the opportunity to speak on such short notice. I tried to get through the maze of stuff and it wasn't working. I'm assuming I waited until too long. But anyway, so I'll start. Our Farm Bureau, the Washington State Farm Bureau and the Yakima County Farm Bureau is not opposed to green energy, to alternate energy. We believe in all the above. But we believe that this process is being rushed too quickly. I won't go into the reasons why I think it is. Well, shortly, I just say it's blindsiding before the public really wakes up to what's happening and how much we're losing. And that's what I'm going to stick with is what are we losing? And I want to echo and thank Commissioner McKinney's comments and our North Yakima Conservation District Director Mike Tobin's comments and the other folks that chimed in. This is very much not a win-win situation. We're walking off into the deep end of the pool without even realizing whether there's water in it or not with this process. There's too much at stake, loss of ESP. If we miss our goals and objectives, we're down the tubes. We're in a deep trouble. We have to stick with those objectives. And if these kinds of projects all chain together, as many as them are, cause us to lose that, we're in a lot of trouble, the agriculture community, and keeping up with regulations with growth management. The wildlife situation, like with the sage grouse, is very important. You know, that could just as easily be an endangered species up with the eagles and the grizzly bears. And these kinds of things, this reckless wanton creation of these solar industrial complexes is just flying in the face of that and a lot of other things. I think that we need to really look, I mean, everywhere else we look, it's about saving open spaces and saving agricultural lands. And now we're just throwing caution to the wind, and now it's all about solar panels. We don't even know if we can find enough resources, these rare earth materials, to create all these panels and batteries. And the fire danger, I'm very worried about the fire influence of fire out in that area. We take the time of year like in the summer when we have those high pressure inversions and the air is stagnant and we've got wildfire seasons. And I sure don't want to go from, I don't want the timber smoke, but I really don't want your lithium batteries burning up and drifting down into Yakima Valley. Start having evacuation notices for people because of the toxic smoke. I think I've kind of touched the bases. I sent in our written comments from our Farm Bureau, a lengthy one that was prepared last fall, and I'll bow out to anybody else that might want to comment. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Ms. Guthrie's hand. I'm not sure if Ms. Guthrie was on when we indicated that folks would have one chance to speak. Are there others who want to speak at this point? And then we'll reconsider Ms. Guthrie's request. Chair Drew, is it acceptable to the council if we give Ms. Guthrie another 2 minutes?
I think if she would like to add additional comments, she can send them in to us by email. 5 minutes is sufficient. Thank you.
Right. We also have Commissioner McKinney raising her hand. I'm guessing that the council would like Ms. McKinney also to follow up with written comments.
Yes, I think that if these are not new issues, if they are that they have had the time to express that and can follow up by sending them to our comment data database, which is listed right in front of you.
Anyone else who would like to speak? So Ms. Guthrie, just to confirm, the council would like you to submit any additional comments in writing, please.
It's more a question than a comment that I have.
What is your question?
Well, I sit across the highway from the Bonneville station that will supply the Ostrea and High Top solar farms. And my question is, now that this looks to be set up to hook up to the solar farms, what happens to Bonneville and what they've done, all the work over there, if this is put on hold or doesn't happen? I mean, that's my question. I'm not sure people are aware that Bonneville already has this set up and they've been working on it for a long time. So my question is, since everything is already fast forwarded, what's going to stop the money waste in Bonneville if it doesn't happen? Or is it just telling us, too bad, so sad? I'm not sure a lot of people know this, but I have this question. What happens to all the money in the Bonneville if this doesn't happen?
I'm sorry, Ms. Jeffrey, this is not germane to our conversation or to what we asked for comments today. We don't speak for Bonneville.
Oh, okay. Well, I know it hooks into that. That's all I know. It was a question. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Guthrie. All right. I believe I'm not seeing any other requests to speak. So it appears, Chair Drew, that we can conclude the meeting at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for commenting tonight, and the council will take all of your comments under consideration as we make decisions moving forward. Appreciate your time this evening. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.